The man in room 1402 had been shouting for 17 minutes straight, and Ivy Callahan knew because she had been counting. Not because she was watching the clock. She was counting because it was the only thing keeping her expression neutral while she finished the medication check 2 doors down. 17 minutes of demands ricocheting off the marble walls of Meridian Medical Center's VIP floor, the kind of sustained fury that doesn't tire itself out. It just looks for a new target. The patient's name was Howard Pratt, 62 years old, admitted for observation following a cardiac procedure, private room with a lake view, personal physician on call, and apparently the wrong thread count in his bed sheets. "This is absolutely unacceptable," he was telling the aide. A 23-year-old named Kezia who was standing in the doorway holding a fresh pillow with both hands like a shield. "I didn't pay what I paid to sleep on sandpaper." Ivy set the medication tray down at the nursing station with the quiet efficiency of someone parking a car. She straightened her badge. She walked to room 1402 at a pace that was neither hurried nor slow, the pace of someone going to retrieve a routine document, and she stepped inside. "Good afternoon, Mr. Pratt." She stopped beside Kezia and placed one hand briefly on the younger woman's shoulder. "I'm Ivy Callahan, the patient experience coordinator for this floor. What can I help you with?" He turned his full attention to her and did what people like him always did. Assessed her in a single glance to determine whether she was worth his time. "You can help me by explaining why a hospital that charges what this one charges can't provide sheets that don't feel like they came from a gas station." "That does sound frustrating," Ivy said. She didn't smile the way hospitality manuals tell you to smile. She just looked at him, calm and direct. "Can I see the bedding in question?" He gestured broadly at the bed. Ivy examined the sheets, 200 thread count. Standard protocol for clinical cleanliness. She already knew what she was going to say. "These are our antimicrobial linens. They're required for post-cardiac patients as a precautionary measure. The weave is tighter than standard hotel bedding, which I understand feels different." She paused. "If you'd like, I can have our care team bring an additional layer of our premium cotton blanket over the top. It won't change what's underneath, but it'll change what you feel against your skin. Or I can note your preference in the file and flag it for your next admission." Mr. Pratt opened his mouth, closed it. He had come in with ammunition for an argument, and she had quietly removed the target. "The blanket," he said finally. "That'll do. I'll have it sent in the next 5 minutes." She turned to Kezia. "Can you pull one from the supply cart on the south end?" Kezia left looking like someone who had just been retrieved from a burning building. Mr. Pratt watched Ivy with the expression of a man recalibrating. "You're not going to apologize?" "For what, specifically?" "For the inconvenience." "The linen protocol isn't an inconvenience," Ivy said. "It's there to protect you. I'm sorry it wasn't explained when you were admitted. That part, the explanation, that's on us." Something shifted in his face, not satisfaction, more like the surprise of a man who had expected to keep shouting and hadn't needed to. "All right," he said. "All right," she agreed, and she left. Outside in the corridor, the VIP floor of Meridian Medical glittered under its careful lighting, warm, controlled, the kind designed to make everything feel like a boutique hotel rather than a hospital. The floor smelled of the eucalyptus diffusers the administration changed every Monday. Soft instrumental music filtered through invisible speakers. The whole space had been built to make patients forget they were sick, which Ivy had always thought was slightly absurd but also undeniably effective. What she hadn't noticed, walking back to the nursing station, was the man who had been standing near the elevator bank for the past 8 minutes, without pressing the button. Spencer Aldrich had arrived at Meridian Medical at 2 in the afternoon without a scheduled appointment, which was unusual for the CEO of Aldrich Health Systems. He had a meeting with the chief medical officer at 3. He had given himself 60 minutes to walk the floors the way he used to walk them when the chain had only 2 locations, not as an executive, but as someone paying attention. He had been on the VIP floor for 12 minutes when the sound from room 1402 made him stop moving. He watched the woman in the teal scrubs walk in. He waited 4 minutes. He watched her walk back out without the shouting following her. He was still watching when Ivy reached the nursing station, picked up her tablet, and said without looking up, "Kezia, I want a note in Mr. Pratt's chart explaining the linen protocol. He should have had that information on admission." Kezia nodded. "And send something to the floor manager. This is the 3rd time in 2 months that a post-cardiac patient didn't receive the full intake orientation." Kezia nodded again, wider this time. Spencer pressed the elevator button only when Ivy turned toward the back corridor. She glanced in his direction once, brief, unhurried, the kind of look that files something away without making a production of it. The elevator opened. He stepped in. He was still thinking about that glance when the doors closed. The first time they actually spoke was in the stairwell between the 4th and 5th floors, which was not where anyone planned a meaningful conversation but where they had one anyway. Spencer was coming down from the administrative offices. Ivy was going up because the elevator on her wing was running slow, and she had medication to deliver before the 3 o'clock rounds. They met at the landing, and Ivy stepped right the same moment Spencer stepped left, and then both corrected wrong, and there was 1 second of the quiet comedy that happens between strangers navigating a 2-foot landing. "Sorry," Spencer said. "Occupational hazard," Ivy replied and went up. He had been about to say something else, but she was already 3 steps above him, tablet in hand, moving with the focus of someone with a specific destination and a commitment to reaching it. He stood there 2 seconds longer than he needed to. Then he went down. Message arrived through the hospital's internal system that afternoon. Mr. Aldrich would like a few minutes with the VIP floor coordinator. Conference room B, whenever convenient. Ivy read it. Read it again. She walked to the nursing station where Tam was reorganizing the supply log with the expression of someone pretending not to have any theories about anything. Tam. The man near the elevator this morning, do you know who he is? Tam set down the binder with the slow, deliberate care of someone who had been holding information for several hours. Ivy, she said, you know this hospital is called Meridian Medical, but it belongs to Aldrich Health Systems. I know. Aldrich Health Systems. Tam pointed at the message on Ivy's tablet, Spencer Aldrich. Ivy stared at the screen for 2 seconds. He's the owner, CEO. 6 hospitals on the East Coast, 2 more in the Midwest. Tam crossed her arms. And you told him the elevator on our wing was running slow. I was explaining why I was in the stairwell. You told the owner of the building that his elevator was slow. It is slow. Ivy folded the message and put it where she put all logistical problems. That's exactly why it needed to be mentioned. Tam was quiet for 3 seconds. You're either very sure of yourself or genuinely unaware of how this looks. Depends on the day. Ivy picked up her clipboard. I have a meeting at 3. Conference room B had a view of Lake Michigan that cost more per square foot than most Chicago apartments. Spencer was standing at the window when Ivy arrived. He had taken his jacket off and draped it over the chair, and he looked, she noticed, like a slightly more legible version of himself. Thank you for coming, he said. Please sit. I'm on a shift, she said. I'll stand. He looked at her for a moment. Not irritation, not amusement exactly. The attentive quality of someone who had expected one kind of response and was genuinely interested in receiving another. Then I'll get to it, he said. I watched how you handled the situation in 1402 today. Ivy waited. I've been in 12 hospitals in the last 4 months, Spencer said. I've seen a lot of people manage difficult patients. What you did was different. Mr. Aldrich, with all due respect, the hospital's internal system has a commendation form. It's quite straightforward to fill out. Spencer blinked. Then something in his expression shifted very slightly, like a man who had expected any response in the world except that one, and was quietly pleased he hadn't predicted it. Noted, he said. You can go. Ivy left, and she spent the rest of her shift trying to understand why a 40-second conversation had left the wait of 40 minutes. The second time they crossed paths was in the hospital's rooftop garden on Thursday afternoon. Spencer was there to review expansion plans for the new surgical wing, a contractor at his elbow gesturing at load-bearing walls. Ivy was there because she came every Thursday when her shift ended at 4. It was the only place in the building where you could see the lake without also hearing a monitor beeping. She almost turned around when she saw the group. But she had been coming to this garden for 2 years, and she had been personally correcting the lavender watering schedule since last spring, and she was not going to be displaced from a bench by anybody. She sat at the far end. She opened her book. Spencer wrapped up the contractor meeting 10 minutes early. You come up here often? He asked, stopping a few feet away. Every Thursday. The lavender's doing well. Ivy looked up from her page. Someone was overwatering it. I corrected the schedule with the maintenance team. You left a note for the maintenance team about the watering schedule. The lavender was drowning. She turned the page. It didn't need more water, it needed someone to pay attention to what it already had. Spencer sat down at the far end of the bench without asking. He looked out at the lake. "What would you change about this floor?" he asked, "if you could?" Ivy didn't lower her book right away. She finished the paragraph, then she placed it in her lap. "The seating area near the east wall blocks the afternoon light. Move those chairs 15 feet north and you'd have full sun from 2 to 5, patients who can walk. And there aren't many on this floor, but there are some. They'd actually use this space. Right now they don't because they'd be sitting in their own shadow." Spencer was quiet. "Also," she said, "the lavender is a nice gesture, but rosemary would do better up here. It's more resilient, it holds up in wind, and there's documented research on its cognitive calming effect which seems relevant given your patient population." "You looked up the research?" "I looked it up when I was arguing with the maintenance team about the watering schedule." She opened her book again. "I'm thorough." He almost smiled, almost. "Did you go into nursing for the science?" he asked. "Or for the people?" Ivy thought about it for 3 full seconds, which was longer than most people would have. "The science," she said. "The people came after. Now I can't separate them." He looked at her the way he had looked at the lavender, with the focused attention of someone examining something that wasn't what he'd expected to find. "Spencer Aldrich," he said, in case the introduction got skipped somewhere. "I know who you are. And you still told me about the elevator." "It's slow," she said and turned the page. That night, Spencer knocked on his friend Brody's hotel room door and said, before anything else, "Forget whatever you think you saw today." Brody, who had spent the afternoon waiting in the hospital lobby while Spencer extended his walkthrough by 45 minutes, leaned against the doorframe. "I wasn't there. I didn't see anything." A pause. "How much would you bet she already knows exactly who you are?" "She knows." Leo's voice came from inside the room. "And she still talked to you like a regular person?" "She talked to me like a person whose elevator was running slow." Brody grinned. 200 says she softens once she really understands what the title means, what you could do for her career with one conversation. She won't. Leo appeared beside Brody. 200 says he's right, she won't soften, she'll treat him exactly the same. He pushed his glasses up, maybe worse, because people like her don't recalibrate based on who's watching, they just are what they are. "I'm not making bets about an employee," Spencer said. Leo and Brody exchanged a look. "He's already decided," Leo said. "About the bet?" Brody asked. "About everything else." Leo turned back toward the room. "He just hasn't said it out loud yet." Spencer walked back down the hall without answering. He heard Brody's voice through the closing door. "He's gone." "Completely," Leo agreed. What Spencer didn't know was that Miriam Colby, Director of Patient Services and 11 years with Aldrich Health Systems, had spent that afternoon reviewing the VIP floor's quarterly activity log, and that she had opened the personnel database, and that she had typed a single name into the search field. Ivy Callahan. The parking garage on Thursday evening was 3 floors underground and nearly empty by the time Ivy reached her car. She had stayed late to finish an incident report. She believed in documentation the way other people believed in closing arguments. Thoroughly, without leaving room for interpretation. She was unlocking her car when Brody's voice carried from behind a concrete column 20 feet away, amplified by the garage's particular acoustics in a way that nobody had intended. 200, Brody was saying. When she finds out all of it, the family situation, the board pressure, everything Spencer is actually dealing with, she won't want any part of it. It's a lot for anyone. A pause. Then Leo, or she's the only one who actually knows how to stand in the middle of it, which is exactly why he's already in trouble. Ivy stood completely still. All of it. Those 2 words had weight behind them, not the title. Something else, something below the surface of the professional presentation she had already seen. She got in her car. She sat with her hands on the steering wheel for a full 90 seconds before she started the engine. The Chicago wind through the parking structure made a low, constant sound all the way to the street exit. It didn't help her stop thinking. She found out in pieces. A nursing aide named Darnell, who had been at Meridian longer than anyone on staff, mentioned over Monday morning coffee that Spencer's father had founded Aldrich Health Systems, but had split ownership 3 ways in a manner that apparently no one in the family had fully agreed to. A professional conference Tam had attended the previous year included a mention of the internal restructuring challenges. Spencer had navigated after assuming the CEO position, which was a polished way of saying someone had attempted to remove him before his first year was finished. Ivy listened. She filed it. She said nothing out loud. What she didn't know was that Miriam Colby had already decided, and had already begun. The message arrived on Monday. Miss Callahan, the compliance office requires your presence this afternoon. A matter has arisen related to a patient data incident on the VIP floor. In the conference room, 3 people were waiting. Spencer, a woman named Judith from the legal department, and Miriam Colby in the far corner chair with a coffee cup and the expression of someone attending a meeting she had quietly organized. Judith slid a document across the table. On Friday evening, a protected patient record was accessed using your system credentials and transmitted to an external address connected to a competing hospital group. The silence that settled had a specific texture. What time? Ivy asked. 7:14 in the evening. At 7:14 on Friday, Ivy said, her voice completely steady, I was in the incident documentation room on this floor completing a chart report. That room has a keycard log. She looked at Spencer directly, and a security camera at the door. My badge-in record will confirm I never left the 4th floor between 6 and 8. Spencer didn't look away. I know. Then whoever accessed my login did it from a terminal I wasn't near. She looked at Judith. Which terminal? The 3rd floor administrative workstation. Ivy placed her hands flat on the table. The 3rd floor is 2 floors below where my keycard places me at 7:14. Someone used my credentials from a location I physically could not have been at. She paused for 2 seconds. Someone who was in this building Friday evening. Someone with enough familiarity with our system to use a colleague's login without triggering an immediate flag. She did not look at Miriam. Not yet. I'd recommend pulling the security footage for the 3rd floor corridor between 7 and 7:30. Carter, the man on Spencer's right who had remained quiet until that moment, leaned forward. That's a reasonable step. Miriam set her coffee cup down. We don't want to draw conclusions before we have the full picture. We're following the evidence, Ivy said, in the same direction it was pointed at me. Spencer looked at Miriam. The look lasted exactly as long as it needed to. The security footage showed what it showed. A woman in a charcoal blazer entering the 3rd floor workstation room at 7:09 p.m., leaving at 7:22. The data transmission timestamped at 7:14. Spencer called Miriam into his office the following morning and set the folder on his desk without preamble. He turned the documents toward her and said, 11 years. Her posture didn't change. Her hands, folded in her lap, shifted by a millimeter. I was protecting this organization, she said, from someone who doesn't understand what this world requires. She understands it better than most people I've encountered who've spent their entire careers in it. You were losing focus. You were letting personal. Miriam. One word, flat, final. We have the badge logs. We have the camera image. We have the transmission record. He closed the folder. You'll cooperate with the formal investigation or this goes to the state licensing board by end of day rather than end of week. She looked at the documents for 4 long seconds. Then she looked at him with the expression of someone who had spent 11 years believing she understood people and was now confronting the possibility that she had misread the one that mattered most. You think she's worth all of this, Miriam said. I think what you did was wrong, Spencer said. That's the only thing I'm addressing today. She picked up her bag. She left without another word. The door closed with a quiet, expensive click. Ivy submitted her resignation the next morning. 1 page, 30 days notice, language straight from the contract. Spencer read it. He didn't open the envelope. He held it with both hands, standing at the window of his office, and stayed there longer than he had expected. He found her at the nursing station before her shift ended. 2 minutes, he said. She studied him. She put down the clipboard. They walked to the break room at the end of the hall, and she stood near the window with the gray November lake behind her. You knew about the bet, she said. I found out that same night. I told them it was wrong. But you didn't tell me. No, he offered no excuse. I should have. I'm sorry. Ivy was quiet for a moment. The bet doesn't bother me as much as the rest of it, she said. What bothers me is that I walked into this building on Monday and the hallway felt different, not in temperature, in the way people looked at me. She held his gaze. I can prove I'm innocent. I can't prove it fast enough to undo what people have already decided. I've seen how that goes. I know where it ends. What if I address it publicly? Spencer said. Today. Full staff meeting. Findings on record. Every person in this building hears exactly what happened and exactly who was responsible. Ivy was quiet for 3 seconds. That would help, she said. But it doesn't change my decision. I know, he nodded slowly. Then I'll respect it, but the position stays open. Not because I expect you to come back, because I'm not giving it to someone else. Something beneath her expression shifted, not its surface, but the quality underneath it. Take care of the floor, she said. The staff meeting was at noon. Spencer stood in front of 43 employees and presented the logs, the timestamps, the badge records, and the third-floor security footage. He said Miriam Colby's name plainly and without editorial comment. He said Ivy Callahan's name in the same sentence as wrongfully implicated and fully exonerated. He watched the room absorb it. He called Ivy afterward. She answered before the second ring. It's done, he said. Thank you. How are you? Angry, she said, but not at you, at whoever assumed I wouldn't fight back. A miscalculation. A significant one. He was standing at his office window, the lake flat and gray below. I want to apologize properly, not over the phone. A pause. I know a place, she said. The coffee shop on Michigan Avenue had mismatched chairs, a chalkboard menu written in someone's actual handwriting, and no corporate branding of any kind. Spencer arrived first. Ivy arrived 2 minutes later in a wool coat with her hair down, and she looked like someone who had decided exactly where she stood and was comfortable standing there. They sat. She ordered. He ordered without asking if she wanted coffee, and she noticed and said nothing because it was true that she did. Tell me what all of it means, she said when the cups arrived. Brody and Leo in the parking garage. They said it like a warning. I want to know what they meant. Spencer turned his cup once. My father founded Aldrich Health Systems 30 years ago, built it from 2 clinics into what it is now. When I was 30, he handed me the CEO position. He paused. Not the company, the position, they're different things. Ivy didn't move. 44% is mine. 28 belongs to my father. The remaining 28 belongs to my older sister, who lives in Seattle, who has never worked a single day at Aldrich Health Systems, and who has very firm opinions about how it should be run. What does she want? To sell to a private equity group that would cut the nonprofit wing and triple patient costs within 18 months. He said it the way he said most things. Direct. Dramatic, not ear. When he calls, it's usually to tell me she's been in touch, or to remind me of the values he thinks I'm forgetting. What values does he think you're forgetting? Focus. Discipline. He looked at his cup. Not letting personal feelings compromise corporate clarity. Ivy stared at him. He'd say that about me. He doesn't know you exist. But if he did. Spencer met her eyes. Yes, that's exactly what he'd say. She sat with that. So that's what the bet was really about. Not whether I'd be impressed by who you are, whether I'd still want to be here once I understood the full weight of what comes attached to you. Yes. And you disagreed with both versions. I disagreed with making you the subject of a bet, he said. But Leo's version, that you'd handle it without flinching, I didn't disagree with that part. She looked at him for a long moment. The coffee shop moved around them without caring. A barista steaming milk, the couple at the window splitting a pastry, the low warmth of a place that had no interest in impressing anyone. I want transparency, she said. If anything touches my name or my standing in that building, I hear about it first, not from a parking garage, not from a hallway. Agreed. If your sister or your father makes moves that affect my work, I'm told directly. Agreed. And I'm coming back, she said, but not to the same role. I want to consult on patient experience across all 6 locations. That's the job that should have existed already. Spencer was quiet for 1 beat. I drafted that contract 8 weeks ago. Ivy looked at him. After the rooftop, he said, the lavender, the chairs, the afternoon light. He held her gaze. I had the legal team draw it up the following week. It's been sitting in my desk. 8 weeks ago, you barely knew me. I knew enough. She looked at the window for a moment. The city moving past in November gray, the lake somewhere beyond the buildings doing what it always did, indifferent and enormous and constant. When your father calls, she said, call me after. I want to know. You want to know about my family complications. I want to know about the things that matter to you. She said it the way she said everything else, plainly, without decoration. Spencer looked at her with the expression she was already learning to recognize. The analytical one, except now there was nothing left to calculate. The answer had been in front of him for weeks and they both knew it. He leaned forward slightly. She didn't move back. The kiss was brief and unhurried, the kind that happens when two people have delayed long enough that the moment feels less like a beginning and more like finally saying something out loud that had been true for a while. The barista glanced over, looked away, went back to the espresso machine without comment. 3 months later, Aldrich Health Systems opened the east wing of Meridian Medical. The one with the chairs moved 15 feet north, the afternoon sun unobstructed from 2 to 5, and the rooftop garden planted entirely in Rosemary. Ivy was there in a wool blazer and a badge that said Patient Experience Consultant Aldrich Health Systems. No scrubs, no walkie-talkie. Spencer's sister Caroline had come from Seattle. She stood near the window during the reception with the focused attention of someone taking inventory, and eventually she made her way to Ivy near the east windows. "My brother says you redesigned this wing," she said. "I gave opinions," Ivy said. "He built it. He says you told him the previous layout was wasting the view." It was. Ivy looked out at the lake, steel blue, catching the winter light. "You don't need to do anything dramatic to fix a wasted view. You just have to be willing to move things." Caroline was quiet for a moment. She had arrived with a position prepared and found it harder to hold than she'd expected. "He seems more settled this year than he has in a long time." "He was always settled," Ivy said. "He just needed someone in his corner who wasn't keeping score." Caroline looked at her sideways. "You're not going to claim that's because of you." "It's not because of me." Across the room, Spencer finished a conversation with a donor, looked up, found Ivy near the east window, and was already moving toward her before he finished the thought. Brody, standing with Leo near the catering table, watched this happen. "The 200, Leo said. "Already sent," Brody said. Spencer matched it. "To what?" "The Nursing Scholarship Fund." He said it felt like the right thing to do. Leo adjusted his glasses. "It was the right thing." "I told him that," Brody said. "He said he didn't need me to tell him." Leo almost smiled. "He's been saying that a lot lately." "Only about her," Brody said. And Leo, who had known it since the fourth-floor stairwell landing, said nothing, because some things don't need a comment to be complete.